Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and I'm here tonight with author AJ Smee or Adam Smee. How you doing tonight, Adam?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invite, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. And how's your week going so far?
I've had a great week. I'm running down to the end of the semester, so vacation is in is in sight. So I'm happy, always happy for vacation.
Right on.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
okay. I have an echo here. Just give me 1 second. That was my fault. Too many windows open. So I was looking up your website and on Punkwright Publishing. What can you tell us about Punkwright?
Um, actually, I'm going to throw that back to you because actually one of the reasons I was interested in your show and I love your channel is that you're always looking for like independent type work, and I think that is very undervalued. I am a librarian, as I mentioned to you earlier, and so a lot of things we get are from the big five publishers and all these mainstream publishers. But there is a lot of really interesting writing going on out there that is not mainstream. So to tell you about punk right publishing is that if it's just about doing it yourself, and you can learn, and YouTube is the best tool in my opinion that's been created for learning. There's of course a lot of junk out there, but if you want to learn how to do stuff, somebody is like publishing it and they're putting it out there, and you can just have free access, and including the publishing process. And it's a little bit of complexity to it, but if you are willing to put some time in and learn some skills, you can do it. And so the idea of punk right publishing was that it was just doing it yourself, being independent, you know.
Yeah. So is that creative freedom important for you to have that kind of freedom to write the book you want to write and not be edited too much to where it's not your creation?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a tough question because it's like uh, we always have the ability to be expressive and creative, and I think the most happiness comes when you don't really depend on other people. But one of the main motives I have is that I'm a little bit older. I'm close to 50 now, and when I started looking at the publishing process and just the time that's involved and the length, it could be years before a book gets out. I'm just like, I can do this. I'm just going to do it myself. Because time waits for no one, man.
Yeah, it doesn't. Father Time is undefeated.
That is correct.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about your book, Scarboys?
Yeah, I have a copy right here. This is Scarboys. I don't know if you get
Hmm?
the it doesn't flip. Scarboys is my first, actually, it's my second novel, but it's my first published novel. I have written another one that I just kind of keep in the archives because that's where it should stay. But this one I felt really good about, and I'm like, yeah, let's put it out and see what people think. And um, it's hard to put it in a specific genre, and which is also an advantage about self-publishing is that you can kind of mix in all kinds of different aspects of different genres, and it doesn't really have to fit into a certain peg that often publishers are looking for. So it's a dystopian novel. I was kind of writing it more as an adult novel, and then I ended up scaling it back, in terms of vocabulary to more of a young adult, but it's more like a new adult. There's it's not an overly complex story, but it's got some vocab in it. And it's a dystopian novel about a boy named Nestor. Nestor, who is living in this world that's been a little bit. It's succumbed to the maladies of the human tendencies, which is climate change, technology, those things that have run rampant and have led to other things such as war. And in the end, Nestor is just kind of left alone. He's saved from a lot of the worst things, but he finds out that he has a condition. And he and his aunt, who live out in a relatively secure place — I don't want to call it a utopia, but it's safer than other places — she dies, and he's got to deal with his problem. And so off he goes. And when he gets into the world, this is where he finds out that things are not actually what he understood them to be, and that children are a commodity for various reasons.
Hmm. Oh yeah, good. That's a good pitch. That's a good. Do need to find out now what they're a commodity for. Yeah.
I could elaborate, but a little temptation.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great pitch for it. And what were some inspirations for the book? What was kind of what inspired you to write this kind of story?
You know, the the process of writing is for me it's really fun. It often starts in one place. I'm very much a discovery writer. I had this, on my own YouTube channel. I made a video. One of the first videos I made was that, next book I write, I'm not going to discovery. I'm going to like plan the thing out because that's the way to do it. And I swear I tried to do it, and I just sit down to write, and then the thing just kind of goes. Um, and so when I actually started the idea for the novel years ago, probably 12, 13 years ago, it just kind of was a seed that was very much a young adult novel and evolved into something that I'm passionate about in terms of environment. That's my educational background is environmental science, environmental studies, politics, which is interwoven in there, and just struggles of human power, the misuse of technology, or the abuse of technology. All those things that become part of the story and are important to the story. So as the story evolved, I tried to bring that in as much as I could because, again, that's what I know. It's what I'm passionate about and interested in.
So I keep hearing authors say, write what you know. So that sounds like that's
Yeah, I tried to write things you don't know, and you just sound really dumb. So
yeah.
that is really good advice. Write what you know.
And so when you wrote the book, I know that you also teach, right?
I'm a teacher. That's right.
Mhm. So did that experience of writing Scarboys and getting it published? How did that change your perspective or how you teach your students?
Uh, so that's a really good question because one of the motives that I had for doing this self publishing is that I teach philosophy. So there is some philosophy in the book as well. It's light philosophy, but I also do graphic design as one of the courses for my students. And so as I embarked on this project, I wanted to just deepen my understanding of my own craft of those areas, but also like show kids that you can do this stuff. It's part of the example of teaching is, or the power of teaching is leading by example and being um, demonstrative of your passions and what you're good about, which is really the most inspiring thing for kids in my experience. Is what I found.
Hmm. And when you how did you edit or how did you proofread the book? Did you have an editor or did you go line by line yourself, or what was that process like?
Dude, I read this book like 13 times for myself, and you kind of have to come to some sort of acceptance that it's not perfect. But when I felt good enough about it, I let a couple of people read it. My wife read it. She's like, "Yeah, this is working," and then I sent it off to an editor, and that's one of those things that you just cannot do yourself in self-publishing. So if
Hmm.
anyone's watching this show and you're thinking about putting something else, spend the money. And I kind of approached it in the way that I did not go formally to school for creative writing. So, I spent it cost me about $4,000 to do the various rounds of editing. But I looked at that whole thing as a college class, which is what I
Hmm.
would spend in the university. And the truth is, what you learn from that, from a professional looking at your work, is invaluable and untouchable for a beginning author or any author, really, because you need to have some sort of objective perspective on your work who's not invested.
So when you send it to an editor, how does that process work? Because there's different types of editors, right? There's line by line, and there's a story, and there's a few other types, right?
Yeah. So the first process is your developmental edit, and that is which in terms of my practice as a teacher is also very good because I need to read a lot of essays, and it's like you see so many things that need attention in a piece of work. It's like, where do you start? So the developmental edit is a very holistic perspective on, how is the story working? How are your characters working? Do things make sense in sort of in terms of time? How are your arcs working? And so there's not too much detail to the actual written part, and that that one is very, very, very important because my own philosophy of books and reading, I like the story. There are I read all kinds of things. I read literature, I read high literature, I read science fiction, I just read realistic fiction, I read young adult, etc. But if the story's not there, then you're just going to get bored. The editor is going to help you develop that story and make sure that it works and it takes you to the right place.
So when an editor looks at it, do they send the revisions to you, or do they just make the changes for you and tell you this is what we changed?
Yeah, so the whole editing world is quite fun as well. There's a whole subculture of like independent editors that will, um, you can find. It's a little bit of a crapshoot because you don't know what you get until you actually get the edit back. But some people will give you sample edits. Um, but there's a whole world out there that you can find someone to meet your needs. And so I found a woman in she lives in Great Britain, and she I put on a Word document. She did track changes all the way through, and it was great perspective and detailed responses to specific areas of the text that really need attention, and it's quite worth it.
Wow. I never realized there's so many different types of editors. There's a lot of different, seems like they're specialized different editors.
I don't know. I can't answer that question. I don't know for certain. I think there are specific tasks of editing. I think most editors can probably do all those tasks, but I selected this woman to do 2 rounds of editing, and then I gave it to somebody else because I wanted a different perspective. And I think that's also important. Not that she couldn't do it. I just think that, the more points of view that you can get on a story, the stronger it's going to be.
Sure. And our friend John from Hey Y'all Listen Up is here. Hey, John. Hope you're having a good Friday.
What's up, John?
And I was looking at, so did you create your own publishing company with Punkwrite, or is it a small press, or how does that work?
Publishing company. That is such a generous word. I mean, no, yes and no. I mean, I made my own logo and I put it on there, but it's a company, I guess, does actual things. I just did it through myself. So,
okay.
Yes, it is a company, but I didn't do any special tax signups or anything. No, I just put my own label on it.
So what's the difference between having your own label on it versus just self-publishing with Amazon and using Amazon KDP? Is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, I think having your own label is cooler. I mean, come on.
Well, other than that, yeah, of course it's cooler.
There's probably not much difference. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if there's certain benefits of having your own, your own mark on it.
No, the only difference that I know of for certain is that when you publish with KDP, you have the choice of using their ISBN numbers. So if you do that, then you really don't have any control of your book and the book sale. I bought my own ISBN number, so I am fully in charge of the book. So I get all the royalties, and I can sell to whoever I want. If you use the Amazon ISBN numbers, then you're restricted to Amazon and Amazon only.
Oh, okay. So you're exclusive if you use those ISBN numbers.
That's correct.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Oh, that clears up. I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
And you also have your own YouTube channel.
I have a YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yeah. And lots of tips on there.
Yeah. I mean, I do. Yeah, YouTube is a funny thing. And I think there are different personalities in terms of what they want. Like what you're doing with this channel is very focused. And I think that the most focused channels are going to have the most success, to be honest with you, because people who find that niche are going to get the same people coming back. My channel is a little bit more diverse. I do lots of writing. I do writing tips, but I also do like my own documentaries. I do my own songs, just because, again, what I love about the YouTube is that it's a way to document your life. It's so, you can make it very organic and free and fluid if you're willing to engage and spend the time in making videos. A lot of my documentaries are made around Caracas area. I'm a U.S. citizen, but I'm not going to live in Caracas forever. But I've made these videos that I can go back and reference, and I know the places, and it's very sensitive to me. And so I love people to watch them. I want them to watch them, but if they don't, that's okay too. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. I guess it kind of comes with the territory, is you just kind of put it out there and hope someone connects with it.
Yes. And to go back to my professional job is that I do video with kids. I do filmmaking with kids. So those are things that help me just practice and keep in touch with the craft. And again, making YouTube videos, the writing videos that I make and the documentaries, it's just another way of telling story. And it's really fun to tell stories. I never realized how important it was to conceive the themes and conceive the plot and storylines of your YouTube videos before you actually go and put them together. And when you do that editing, it's a craft, and that's fun. For me, it's fun.
Yeah, it is a craft for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think most people realize how long it takes to make just a quick video on YouTube. It takes a lot of time.
I think they have no idea unless they're making them.
Yeah.
Some of my earlier videos had graphics in them that I made, and those things, easily 18 to 20 hours to make an 8-minute video. Which is, to be honest with you, it's just like writing. If it's like you need to do those things because you enjoy them and you have fun, and not because you expect anything as a reward.
Yeah, definitely. It is a labor of love.
Yes, it is.
How long have you been writing for?
I've been writing in some way or another. I've been writing since high school. I used to write a lot more poetry. I did a lot of, I was in rock and roll bands when I was in high school and college. So I played a lot of music, and I wrote a lot of music with the band members. So that type of poetry and songwriting was quite fun. And I have notebooks just full of stuff that some of it's in song and some of it is just there. I actually never go back and look at it. But I sat down to seriously start writing prose probably when I was in my mid-20s. So about 20 years, I guess I could say I was serious about it.
Nice. John says, I had no idea how long it took to edit a video until I started doing it.
Yep, that's right, John.
You really don't realize how long it takes until you do it, and how long it takes to do it right. Yeah. John's asked, what are your musical influences?
Oh, that's a great question, because that is kind of the premise of my website and my my channel, is that it's about punk. I used to listen to a lot of punk music growing up. I grew up in the late 1980s when punk music was kind of coming to an end, but it was still there. We'd go see shows in Cleveland. I'm from Akron, Ohio, so we'd go see shows in Cleveland. Listen to a lot of Fugazi. I listened to a lot of Glenn Danzig. I listened to a lot of the Misfits. That was when I was probably 13 or 14, and then I went through a very serious time of the Grateful Dead. I just listened to the Grateful Dead for about 4 years straight. I didn't listen to anything else. And it was very satisfying, let me tell you.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I loved, just to finish up that question, because I think it's important, is that one of the things that I learned when I was, a very young adolescent, is that, and I write about this on my website, there is this Fugazi concert that I went to in Lakewood, Ohio. And it was a rented warehouse, and they probably rented it for dirt cheap. And we get there, and it's a $2 entrance, and you open the door, and it was just absolutely packed with kids. And it was just so much energy and so much life. And it was $2. And those things for me are hugely important, because, those bands in that time period, a lot of it was about accessibility, and they didn't really want to go to mainstream labels. They wanted to do what they wanted to do. They didn't really care how it happened, and everybody latched onto it. And that was the movement. And when I, in the last 10 or 12 years, this whole idea of independent publishing is, for me, very much the same. It's like people are just doing it because they want to do it. Some people have been very successful, but it's just, finally there's some sort of way to get your ideas out there, and you don't have to really worry about everyone else judging you. You can just do it if you have the confidence and the gall to do it.
That's the first step, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And what did writing lyrics and poetry, how did that help you write prose? When you got serious about writing prose, how did those years writing music help you, or not?
That was a tough question.
Oh.
Yeah. To give you an honest answer, I think that the actual writing itself, probably not not so much because the style is so different, and rock and roll music is not really heavily based on vocabulary, so it's just you're feeling a moment and you're putting it out. And so that, if I were to say anything, that would probably be the most relevant, is that music and writing lyrics is about finding some sort of flow. And I think in art, in any kind of expression that you want to pursue, it's like you just have to have some flow to it. When you write a book that is thick, this is 400 pages, you want to hop on that bus and just like get carried away for 400 pages. So you need that flow. And if you lose that flow, whether it's a rock and roll song or a piece of poetry or prose, then I think that's a red flag. It says you got to change something.
And for your book, did you seek out reviewers before you? I know you had your people look at it and editors. Did you seek out reviewers?
No, I did not. I did not at all. And I think one of the reasons was that I got to the point where I'm just like, you know what, I need to like finish this thing and just be done with it, and just put it out in the world. And so I put a deadline for myself with editors. I put a deadline with publishing, and I put a deadline on my YouTube channel, Punk Right. And I said, it's coming out at such date, September 22nd. And I'm like, I'm going to meet that date. And it was tight, but I had to work my butt off, because if not, it's really hard to keep yourself motivated to produce something. So I didn't have time, to be honest with you. Although I've submitted to other places, I'm still waiting on some things, but it's a slow process.
Yeah, definitely. And from your journey to getting your book published, what was some of the best and worst advice you received when you're in the process of writing your book and getting it ready for publishing?
I'm not going to say that there was bad advice, but I will say that there are so many different YouTube channels out there that you seek because it's very accessible. It's easy, but I think you have to be very wary of the facility of those channels. They'll give you some advice that is maybe not necessarily based. It doesn't have any kind of profundity to it, I guess. And it's just a waste of, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, because everything helps, but it's not the best use of your time. I would suggest that you read some more. I mean, if you're writing prose, you need to read people who, write about prose. That's very, very helpful. And if you can seek out people who are experienced, that's always going to be great. I don't want to say that's the worst advice, because, it's a big cavern, man. It's like you're walking into this big dark room and you're just kind of holding a candle and you're hoping that you can see something until you get to the end. And so, sometimes you trip over rocks.
Yeah, it's part of the journey, right?
It's part of the journey.
Yeah. Were there any resources you found during your time that you recommend, or that you would tell someone who's trying to get their book published to look into?
There are actually the two. I mean, I've read all kinds of books on how to write dialogue, and I have volume. As a librarian, I have a credit card, so I can order stuff, and I've read all kinds of stuff. But I have to say, the two books that stand out most was the Stephen King On Writing. I think is a fantastic book about the craft, because he doesn't get too bogged down in the details of like the actual craft. He talks very much about the process and the organic nature of it, and the feeling of it, which I think is very important. And Anne Lamott wrote another one called Bird by Bird, which I think is also a great, personal history of the writing craft and how you get into it. And she says the same thing. She's like, she gets to the end of the book and she's like, if you're doing this for money, that is the wrong reason. It's like, it's a life. It's part of your life. It's part of what you do. It's you breathe, you write, you process the world, you make stories, you create. And I think those are things that human beings do. And that is the enjoyment. If you can make money, great. But I honestly don't think there are many people making money off of their books, and the ones that you see on YouTube who tout that, I think are, that's the survivor bias. And they are very few in terms of percentage.
Oh.
I think. I don't really know, but that's my perception of it.
And what books do you like to read? What are you reading now?
Oh, I read all kinds of things. What I'm working on now is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. which is that's work. That novel is work. I'm enjoying it, but it is work. What was it before I read that? I read William Gibson's. I was just a Neuromancer. I got through that, which I didn't love, I have to say. I think that again, that was, I don't know, it's just my opinion, but I think that it wasn't a greatly written book. I had a hard time following the story. I think it was great. The concept was great, and I think that's why it's such an important book, because it's the first one that starts dealing with the Matrix and that other world of the cyber world. But I had a hard time following that book. I like sci-fi. I don't read too much realistic fiction. When I want to get into stories and movies, I want to be somewhere else. So that's the stuff that I like to read. Oh, I just read the Mistborn series. I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, did you read the series?
I read the whole thing. That was great. I picked up the first one. I'm just like, and actually that's one of the series that I know that Brandon Sanderson plots. And I read that and I'm like, oh, I got to plot because this is going to turn out great. But whatever. We're all individuals.
The size of those books is what makes me nervous to start that series.
Again, for me, like reading is just, it's a vehicle. So if you can get on the train, it doesn't really matter. You pick it up and you get through it when you get through it. There's nobody's keeping track. You do it for entertainment.
What was your favorite thing about the Mistborn series?
Well, one of the things that I do not like about fantasy per se, this is personally, is that sometimes the worlds are so difficult to get into, and the magic is so implausible that I just don't believe the story. And the Mistborn series, it was full of magic. But the magic system that he made, the world building, was so believable that I believe the characters and I believe what they were doing. And so for me, that was one of the best fantasy series that I've read in a very long time.
Wow. Maybe I might have to pick that up now.
It's worth a read. I recommend it.
Yeah. And Neuromancer, I'm with you with the Neuromancer. It was a tough read. I had a tough time getting into it. And I think the writing, there's some really great lines in it, but I just couldn't get I just couldn't get a rhythm when I was reading it.
Tell me more about that.
It didn't feel smooth. The story didn't move. I don't know. It was written, the language and the wording there was some really great one or two liners in there that I was like, wow, that's really awesome. But as a whole, I just couldn't get into a rhythm with the story to just get lost. I couldn't get lost in that book.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, man. 100%. And that's what I was saying before. It's like when I read books, I just want to flow through it. Mm-hmm. And I had a really difficult time with the flow. There were characters with multiple names, and then it was just like, it was huge shifts in the story. I'm just like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. No. But I was a little bit surprised. I knew that it was influential, but I didn't realize how influential until I read it. There was just so many things that in modern science fiction or just modern culture that came from that book. It's really amazing how much came from that book. And I knew it was influential, but I didn't know that it was that influential.
Which is why I picked it up. Because it's like, oh, I got to read it. It's one of those things that you have to put on your list. Mm-hmm. But it's off my list now, so I'm happy about
that. Yeah, we read it. As in a group of us read it like March or April, and yeah, it was a tough one. For sure. Yeah. When you're writing, when you're writing a character, what makes it, or when you're writing a character or you're reading about characters or watching a character, what makes the character compelling for you?
So characters are very difficult. That's a really complex question, because I don't think there's a simple answer. And I've come, the more that I write, and I've almost finished with a rough draft of my second book, which is a very different book. It's more literary. It's a book of literature. So the more that I read literature and the more I read different types of genre fiction, I think what happens with the character is quite different, and the demands on the writer would be different in terms of generating some sort of believability of the character. In literature, to talk about that one, and then I'll talk about Scarboys for a second. But in the literature aspect, I think it's very important that the character is the central emotive element of the story. So what is happening to that character must be somehow convincingly made to drive the story. And it's all about usually one character. Not always, but I think most pieces of literature are going to be about one important character that is really feeling a situation and having a real human experience that somehow comes through the page. I believe there's a little bit more introspection in that, but I'm generalizing, of course. But I think that's what makes it more interesting as a literary piece of work. In a piece like Scarboys, which is more of a genre type of work, I think if I'm generalizing because there is no right way to do anything, but I think it's more about how characters interact with the other characters that really creates this synergy for the story. And that multiplicity of characters is what makes it fun and interesting, because it's always, it's like an action reaction that's happening and building across the story arc.
And with being a publishing, self-publishing, and getting and promoting your book, it can be tough, I'm sure, to get the word out, because there's so many books being published every day. How do you promote your book? How do you get the word out there?
Well, I mean, doing this stuff like this is why I'm so very appreciative that you invited me on and decided to have a conversation, because these things are hugely important. You grow a community. You have a YouTube channel that you help process your thoughts, and you put it out there, and people latch on and they'll see bits here or there. You got to do a website. You got to talk to your friends. I have your friends are the pillar to getting you going. I think I don't care what discipline or activity you're doing. It's going to start with your friends. You're making cookies. The first people you're going to sell to are your friends. So for me, it's also just, understanding that the process is my life. So I have lots of time, hopefully, fingers crossed, but it's not something that you're going to be gratified with in a week or 2 weeks. And, I want to sell 100,000 copies. That doesn't really happen. It happens to some people, but it doesn't really happen to the vast majority of people.
Yeah. It can be tough to, I would imagine it would be tough to kind of stand out amongst all the other books that are being published. It must be a little tough. And like you said, it's building the community and building a following, and it can be a slow process. Yeah. And with, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I mean, again, I think that your point is right on, is that if the process is what it's about, it's about, I think it's difficult. We have so much cognitive dissonance nowadays, because we see all these successful people about, on YouTube, whatever, all these channels and TV and sports stars, and that becomes kind of your ceiling, and that's where you want to compare yourself to. But that's absolutely ridiculous. It's like, those people are doing it not because they want to make money. They make money because they've always loved playing basketball or whatever. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, and I used to watch LeBron James play in high school, and he was so fun, because you could tell he was just so passionate. He was a phenomenon, of course, but he was so passionate about the game that he'd do the same thing if nobody paid him, and that's kind of where you have to be.
Yeah, that is tough, but it helps that he's able to go to the NBA, so that's always good.
Yeah, it does help.
he's made a pretty good life for himself.
Yeah, he's done all right.
Yeah, he's done okay for himself. And with your musical background, do you listen to music while you write?
Not at all. I can't do it. No, not at all. I listen to music when I do my graphic design, because that's. But I find that particularly words, any words. If I'm trying to generate words and I'm hearing other words, that's oil and water.
Oh, okay. Not even ambient music or like background music?
No, I prefer absolute silence. Actually, I have a place where I have in my house that I have no internet, and closed. I have two doors, so it's relatively silent. I get some background noise from the garbage truck that comes by, but I prefer silence. That's when I work best.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I like having silence.
Yeah.
With your YouTube channel, how do you decide what types of videos to make? Do you get questions that you want to answer, or do you find lessons you've learned and want to pass on to other people, or how do you decide what to focus on with your channel?
Um, I've just kind of whatever I'm feeling in the moment. To be honest with you, I'm like, oh, this would be good. I want to do a video on this. I've only made one video. There's this one kid who's been very kind to me. He's very interactive with the channel. Who's had a couple of requests, and I've made one video on his request. But mostly, it's just kind of like where I am with my own process is like, oh, this is what I need to talk about right now. It's like if I'm working on I'm doing a line edit for my book, I'm going to make a video on line editing because that's where my head is. So that's kind of how I deal with my content.
That sounds like a good, because if you're in the middle of it, it's fresh in your mind, so it's easier to focus on that then.
I feel it's more natural and fluid. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some common questions you've gotten from your students with have they asked you about your experience with writing the book and getting it published?
Not too much. Not too much of the publishing aspect. I think that is such a foreign idea to kids. That to the kids that I work with,
Right.
which is, I work with Venezuelans. They're not Americans. The vast majority are Venezuelans. But they're interested in the process when they look at it and they're like, that's so thick. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's really thick. They're like, how long did it take you? That's what they want to know. They want to know because, and again, I'm going to make a very general statement, but I think that the negative aspects of social media and dealing with the accessibility of computers has really limited the ability for younger kids and the younger generation to find some deep flow, to find some deep thinking. They don't have extended periods of time to think quietly. When I was growing up, again, we were making half pipes. I used to skateboard. I still skateboard a little bit, but we would build half pipes. So building a half pipe took us, it took us a month and a half. So that is a project that you have to be committed to, and you have to like work on day in, day out. That's the way it was. We didn't have anything else. You did it yourself. Nowadays, I think kids are just very easily and superficially entertained, which, in my opinion, affects their ability to have longer, sustained thoughts and projects. It's
So
a
do you think
problem. I think it's a problem.
So is it attention span? Is that kind of part of it?
I can't remember what I was like when I was 14, but I think that it's been a long time. But I think that, yes, I see it's difficult for kids to have a serious conversation with themselves for longer than a couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm. I think having time to decompress is important. And like you said, just quiet time for yourself just to reflect and absorb what happened. I think that's becoming less and less common because I used to do a lot of business travel. And after a long trip, I used to take the plane rides to decompress and just forget about everything. And one of our company used to like us to write emails during the flights because they wanted us to. That's my time to just turn off for a little while. So that helped me process everything. And then when I got back to the office, then I would write emails or whatever. But I think I think part of it is that people don't think they can allow themselves to have that time too. I think sometimes they feel pressured or they feel like they have to keep up, or they don't feel like they're being productive enough, so they keep going when they should stop. I think some people have a problem with admitting to themselves they need a break. I think they feel like they can't give themselves that break.
Yeah, and your point is right on. It's like some of the best thinking, and this goes all the way back to Descartes. Descartes was an avid walker. He would get up every morning and he would find his silence and he would walk around his little village and he would come up with his ideas. And so you asked me about where I get my YouTube content, is that often I'm not even thinking about my YouTube channel and something will pop in my head because I have the time to like just let my brain work. That slow thinking there are a couple of different ways our brain works. There's fast thinking, which is on, and we're fast thinking right now. You're asking me questions, but as I slow down, my brain is still making connections, and that's where good ideas come from. But you're right. You have to find a space and a time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I do wonder what, even to adults, what the platforms, like all the platforms are engineered to gather our attention and to get us hooked. That's their business model, is to have us engaged constantly with their platform. So I do wonder what it's doing to everyone's attention spans, but especially kids, because they're still developing. So it is a little scary.
Well, there are two aspects to that. I think the one is attention span, but the also is just about how you spend your time. I had TikTok for about 2 days, and I was scared, man. It's like I sat down one morning. This is a Saturday morning, and suddenly an hour and a half went by, and I'm looking at just garbage on TikTok. I'm like, this is horrible. And so, it sucks your time, but also there's no real value in that. I feel a little bit differently about YouTube. We're having a great conversation. This is fantastic. We can connect around the world, but a 30 second, what do you get? 5 seconds on a TikTok? Maybe.
I've never used it. Yeah.
Good for you, man. You're better.
I'm avoiding it. Yeah.
You're better than I am. That is not on my to read list.
Yeah, no, I'm holding out. I'm holding on that one. I'm staying strong.
You're a good man.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I try to avoid all the. Twitter is okay. I think I've made some fun connections on Twitter, but I'm trying to use it less and less.
And Twitter's for connections, like you said. That's good. Instagram is okay. You can find some interesting content, but again, I think, which is why I love books, and I will continue to read books, is that the sustained mental activity of engaging with a book, fiction, nonfiction, is so different than any activity that you can get on even a video or YouTube or anything.
Yeah, it is, and you're right. Is to engage in it is important, and books now span many genres. I mean, there's books that there's some books that fit into fantasy, horror, historical fiction, whatever it may be. They fit perfectly in that box and they're fine. But there's a lot of books that span many different genres. How tough is it to write a book? It sounds like Scarboys spans over a few different genres. Is that hard to promote a book that it's harder to explain and doesn't just fit into one specific genre?
Look, I don't care what book you write. I think it's hard to promote a book.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's harder. It may be harder to sell a book. You'd have to ask somebody who's actually engaged, an agent in the business. They would know better. But I think that as an independent author, promoting a book is just work, and I have friends who are amazing musicians, and they're in the same boat. It's like, how do you, as an independent person, how do you get your stuff out there? It's not about the quality. It's about accessibility. It's about the work. That's the work.
Yeah. And how do you deal with negative feedback when you receive it? That's one thing that I admire about authors, is they must get a ton of, through the process of writing their book, and even after, processing that negative feedback and turning it into a positive. How do you deal with negative feedback?
Actually, I thrive on negative feedback, and there are a couple ways if you get feedback. One is about just, which I've encountered none, which is just mean people. And if someone's going to say something mean to you, they're just mean people. What are you going to do? But if somebody actually has a serious critique about the book, you listen. Absolutely. If you don't do that, you'll never grow.
Definitely. And is there a certain time of day or certain seasons that you like to write in? Does seasons or weather help you focus?
Yeah, I think the time of day actually is important to me. I used to, when I finished Scarboys, I was grinding it out about 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd have to go to work. And that was work for me. It was really hard. And I've changed my schedule since then, and I'm trying to write at night. I have a word limit that I want to get. I try to get 500, but I usually get between 350 words to 500 words 3 or 4 times a week. If I can get 2,000 would be brilliant a week, but I usually get about 1,200 to 1,500 words a week. And I feel like I'm more productive because the only thing that's pressing me when I write at night is me going to bed. Whereas in the morning I have to go to work, so it's a little bit more. It interrupts my thinking, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm tired.
Did you? I know you work in a library. Did you put your own book in your library?
Yes. So this has been a really great experience because so there are a couple classes who will read them as a class set, so I can, provide some guidance about the process and the books and literature in that respect. I did an event which I made on my YouTube channel. You can see that there, where I did a reading with some of the other artists of the school, some musicians, and another author that I had that's at school here. So you do those things on a small scale, and again, it's fun. It's been so much fun, and that's why you do it.
What about teaching? What about teaching is fulfilling for you? What's your favorite part?
I've been teaching for about 20 years, and it's hard to say that there's one specific thing, because for me, the setting, the school setting, the academic setting, with the exchange of ideas. I work with smart people all the time. There's Schools are political, but they don't have to be, and a lot of us stay out of that. The kids are always thinking, they're always asking questions. My brain is always functioning. That exchange is what keeps it fresh, and I can't imagine a different workplace that I would want to be in than an academic workplace. And I get to teach so many different subjects. I teach philosophy, I've taught literature, I teach graphic design, I teach film classes. So, dude, I'm never bored. I'm never bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite movies? If you know your film, do you have any favorite movies?
It's funny. I'm watching fewer and fewer movies. I find that my patience and tolerance for movies is less and less as I have other interests. I used to watch more, but I feel like there's a lot of disappointing movies out there. So it's a hit or miss. Well, let me think for a second. What was the last one that I saw? Oh God, I can't remember.
It's been that long, huh?
No, it's not been that long. I decompress with friends sometimes, and Seinfeld's on again, so I could watch Seinfeld.
Yeah. Are you a fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm? Have you seen that?
Uh, what's his name? Jerry?
Larry David.
Larry David. I don't find him that funny. No, I
Really?
don't. No, I don't. I tried. I really did try.
I was surprised because he was when I watched Seinfeld, the seasons that he was gone, that he after he left, seemed that the quality went down a little bit on Seinfeld. I thought
I think he's a great writer. Don't get me wrong, but again, it's hard for me to engage with television anymore,
yeah,
and movies. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old, Steve.
yeah get in line. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Do you watch movies? Do you like movies?
I do. I haven't seen as many because I've been reading a lot more, so I don't have enough. I don't have a whole lot of time for movies, but I enjoy movies now and then. Before I started reading more and more last January or so, I used to read a lot of indie. I used to watch a lot of indie movies and read indie comics. So it just made sense to me to read indie books. So that's why now mostly I read a lot of indie books, because it's just kind of my thing. And maybe it's from that, because I'm from pretty much the same generation. I think it was the punk rebellion kind of thing. Is it's I don't know. Maybe it's that it's a subconscious thing that I root for the underdog, or I just admire the people who try and do it themselves, who try and who have this love that they want to get it out there, and they do all these things on their own, and they have these wonderful stories to tell after their experiences.
I think I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to say that people who who have a lot of success don't have great stories. I'm sure they do, but none of them are going to talk to me, so I'll never know.
One of the things that I did, to go back to the book and the process, that I really began to understand better, like when you deal with mainstream publishers, there are authors, of course. The authors come up with the idea and they write their book, but that whole, from the final draft to getting the thing published, there are so many people involved. It is such a massively collaborative project that you kind of you just underestimate. I shouldn't say, you overestimate the actual value of somebody writing, I think. And I don't mean that in any way to demean any author. Well, what I mean is that crafting has so many hands that are touching it, that without that, it'd be very, very difficult to do it by yourself. And I think it's important to note, and I'm including myself in that process. That is why you absolutely have to write, get someone to look at your work. You need beta readers, you need alpha readers, you need editors, you need as many people looking at it to give you feedback. And if you take that negatively, then you're kind of doomed in making something that's worth reading and quality.
Yeah. Just want to say hi to Danielle Bokhara is here. Hey Danielle, hope you're having a good week.
Hi Danielle.
And our friend Jeff Lane is here. Hey Jeff, hope you're having a good Friday. And Jeff is one of the first authors I connected with on YouTube. That he accepted my invite back in March to have a chat, and here we are. And it's funny that we talk about.
What did Jeff write? Sorry, just to
the first book I wrote of Jeff's was One Way, and he also wrote This Paper World, This Burning World. We're going to be reading The Three Scrooges in a few weeks for Christmas, and Jeff, speaking of indie authors and getting your work out there, he actually narrated his book and put it out on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Good for you, Jeff.
Episodic form. So I ended up listening to his book, This Paper World and This Burning World. I listened to it on Apple Podcasts as I was riding my bike, and then I'd come and read the paperback when I got home. But there's something about an author narrating their own book that experience, even if they're not a professional narrator, it's just something special about that.
And I can only imagine how much time that took.
Yeah. Yeah, he did a great job though. And cool. Like your tree. Yeah, I have a tree behind me now.
That's good.
My wife maybe put it back there because she said we need some Christmas cheer. So there you go.
So, Steve, if you were to recommend one of Jeff's books, which one would you suggest for me to buy? And I'm asking this in all seriousness because one of the things I want to do in the library, as I mentioned earlier in the show, is that I want to create an independent section of books for independent authors. And there's so much happening out there that you have to look for it a little bit. But there's great work that I think that people are just missing because it doesn't come through your feed. So, if you were to suggest one by Jeff, which one should I go with? One Way?
I would say start with One Way. Yeah, that's where I started. So, and it's a stand. Well, I think there's going to be a trilogy, but for now, it can be read as a standalone. So,
cool.
That's a good place to start. But I think with another reason I really love indie books, and you touched on it too, is that there's so many people involved in the publishing process that, from your vision to all these different people it goes through, and by the time it goes through all the editors and the people who decide what genres or what stories are hot at that certain time or selling, and they water it down so much that at the end it may not even be what the creator wanted. So that's what I admire too, is that they they write the books, and even if they're not perfect, even if there's grammar errors or spelling errors, it's still what they wanted to have out in the world. And that's what I really love about it. And I want to see what they wanted to produce, whether I enjoyed it or not. I still want to know what they wanted it to be.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of non-negotiables with stories. Again, you want to get your story right. But I think if your story is good and you have someone help you with that as an independent author, then the rest is a little bit more forgivable in terms of like a few grammar mistakes here or there. But yeah, I think your perspective is right on. I'd support that.
Yeah. And Jeff says, too kind, Adam.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, I did send out my book, an earlier version of my book, to about 10 or 12 agents. And some of the responses I got was just that. They're like, dystopian is not selling right now. So we're just, sounds good, but dystopian is not selling. Like, oh, well, what do you do?
Yeah. You have to wait for the next popular dystopian movie to pop out. And then, yeah.
Or you do it yourself.
That's what I would do. But,
Yep.
I don't have the talent to write a book, but I love reading them. So here I am. Misspelled Jared is here. Hey, Steve, just got here. Hey, hope you're having a good Friday. And Fine Reads is here. Hi, AJ. Hi, Steve. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Friday. Hope you're having a good one. Yeah. But yeah, I do. And maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's the generation or just I don't know what it is. I just really admire the indie scene.
I do too. I really respect it, and I respect people who spend the time for, without seeking necessarily monetary rewards, because I've calculated for me to make back what I've spent on the book, which I don't think is uncommon. I'd have to sell about 2,000 books, which that's a lot of books, man. That is a lot of books to sell. I don't know, maybe when I'm 60, I'll get there, get my money back. But honestly, who cares? Whatever. It's just money, right?
I think if your goal is getting it out there for people to read, then you mission accomplished.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's and is Scarboys available on Kindle Unlimited?
Yeah, Scarboys is available on it's on Amazon. It's on Kindle. You can also buy paperback, and it's also on Barnes and Nobles. I put it up in 2 places. I was going to do that. That's actually a whole other process as well that I had to learn. That's a lot of work to really understand how that goes. And I was going to put it on other platforms, but the truth is, I think I'm happy with 2. So you can get it. This is, you can say what you will about Amazon. There's a lot of negative things about Amazon that I concur with. But one of the coolest things is that it is a print on demand. So if you want a book, they're going to print it for you, and that's it. There's no excess back stock. You don't have to buy a certain amount of books. They'll just print it and send it off.
Yeah, it makes me a little bit nervous that there's no other company out there just doing self-published books, like doing print on demand. Because if Amazon ever wants to turn that valve off, then what happens then?
I have a feeling that they would not do that, because despite even as a self-publishing author, they're making more money off of me than I'm making off of me.
Oh, wow.
Yes, for sure.
So is there a percentage that they take with every book sale, or how does that work?
They do take a percentage. And so that percentage, instead of being the publishing company that's taking that percentage, they're taking that percentage. They are basically the publishing company. You get a larger percentage as an independent, as an author, but they're still taking enough of a chunk. And as they dominate that market, they're making lots of money for sure. So I'm sure they're very happy. They're all about the indie process. It's a love-hate thing, but I think it's cool. I really do think it's cool what they're doing. I don't criticize it at all. I think they've provided a lot of opportunity. And what the hell? Send Jeff Bezos to the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, it could happen now.
Yeah, it could happen now.
It could happen. I think someone was going to go into space. Somebody was a couple of days ago, but I don't know if they ever did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I guess if you can, then go for it. I mean.
Yeah, again, those are very expensive independent projects. The Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos, which I think it's brilliant to get off the planet. I think that it is our destiny in many ways as human beings. I think that is the furthest reach of our creativity. And I say go for it. Absolutely. So, I'm not totally against it. What can I say?
Misspelled Jared says there are places like Ingram Spark that you can use, but I use Amazon as well. And they were trying to open it up more. They just added Hardback. That's pretty cool. I like that
They
they
did.
added hardbacks. That's pretty
Yep.
neat.
But again,
If someone,
hardbacks are expensive. I mean, if you're gonna, for me to do a hardback cover, I have to do a whole different reformatting, and I'd have to sell a lot of books to be able to, to make it worth my time. And at this point, I don't have the audience to do that. But it's
so
cool.
so if you did decide to do a hardback version, would you have to reformat it, or what was that? What would that process be like?
Yeah, because you've got the soft cover is just the outside, okay, but then the hardback you got to do something on the inside cover. So that's a total different formatting, and you have to adjust things, which is not massive work, but it is work. I'd rather at this point just write something instead of just move on to my next project.
Yeah. And if let's say you found a book and you found an error in Scarboys, could you go back and fix it?
You can actually, you can re-upload copies, so there's some flexibility with that, and I've done that twice. Yep. So
that's kind of handy.
I know it's a cool thing. I can't criticize it too much because there's a lot of flexibility and there's a lot of opportunity. And had I written this book 15, 20 years ago, it would still be, in my notebook, not even on my computer.
Yeah. Is Kindle Unlimited a good source of income for you? Does the page reads, do they help you out a lot, or?
Yeah, I did not do Kindle Unlimited. I chose not to do that option, and I don't know if it was good or bad, to be honest with you. I saw one of your other, I can't remember the author's name, but there was the woman who she wrote. It was also a sci-fi book, one that you highlighted that she was one of your favorites. And
was it Kayla Frost?
Yes, it was her. And she said that she had a lot of success with that, and I understand that point of view. And good for her.
Yeah.
In retrospect, maybe I'll do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard good and bad about that. I think some authors have found that they have good success with that and page reads, and some kind of wonder if it's worth the hassle. But yeah, I'm not too sure how that works.
Yeah, I don't know. If we'll see. Maybe I'll try it next time.
Yeah. What are you working on now? Your next book.
So I have Scarboys is. I wrote it as it could be read as a standalone, but it took a very different path from what I originally conceived the book. In the end, I actually had to, change a lot of things, and I wrote a very different part 2 and 3 than what I had in my mind. But the other, the other part 2 and 3 that I didn't write is what I want to write about in this. I guess I call it a sequel, maybe a companion novel. But before I got there, I've been living in Venezuela. Venezuela has been a very interesting place for the last 6 years. I've been here for 6 years. It's been a lot of political unrest. There's a lot of poverty. There are many social struggles, and I've been writing about that, and it evolved into something that I've actually put into a novel. So it's a shorter novel. Scarboys is about well, when I first wrote Scarboys, it was about 130,000 words, and I ended up cutting about 30,000 words.
Wow.
Which you would think that it's difficult, but honestly, it's almost like this catharsis. You're just like, oh god, yeah, that sucks. just gone. And so I whittled it down to something that was good. I like what it is. And the current novel that I'm writing is very much about Venezuela. It's about it's literary fiction. It's a more advanced level of writing, I guess. It's more introspective. It's more about my experiences, and I am really enjoying writing it. I feel like, in many respects, it's coming out of me much more naturally and fluidly than Scarboys. And this is another thing that I would say about those two different genres is that when you write a genre fiction or bestseller type fiction, it is very scripted. You have a certain movement and pacing that you want to keep. Whereas if you get into literary, the literary genre, you have it can go a little bit more. And I've read some great books. One of my favorite authors, Jose Saramago. I know he just puts you on. He just puts you on and just takes you. And that's what I'm hoping to try to do with this novel, called The Bank Notes.
Do you have an ETA when that might be ready to go?
So I'm actually thinking about making a video of this. I may not publish this book right away, for the reason that I want to get back to Scarboys, and I know that even after a rough draft, that process is a very long and can be an arduous process. And I don't know if I want to spend that time right now, because I have some ideas about the continuation of Scarboys that I want to get on paper. So uh, we'll see. It could be next year, but probably a couple years.
Okay, looking forward to that. That sounds really great.
Yeah, it's fun.
Misspelled Jared says Kindle Unlimited varies. It pays on the pages read, and it pays less, but it's good to get it out to people.
Yeah, I think as a first-time author, it's a great opportunity.
Mhm.
Even though I didn't do it, I don't know. I don't really. it's it's all a mystery. It's a learning process.
Definitely, it's all a learning process. So before I let you go, I have a question for you. I try and close out every conversation with this question: is what was your first job?
My first job, I was 14 years old. I worked as my first actual paying job where I paid taxes, because I had many jobs before that. You can ask my dad. My dad had me working when I was about 6 years old, tearing down walls, but that doesn't count. But my job was a busboy at a restaurant in Akron, Ohio, and the restaurant is still there. I drove by the other day. The most impacting job, though, was when I was 18. I graduated high school, and I was working third shift at a semi-tire rim making plant factory. It was the worst thing that I had ever done in my life, and I immediately went to university.
How long did you work there for?
3 months, I think I made it. Yeah, that was enough.
That was enough.
Yeah, that was enough.
So what did you major in when you went to school?
I went to Allegheny College. I have an undergrad I have a minor in Spanish and education, and I have a major in environmental studies. And then I did my master's degree in Santiago de Chile, in political philosophy.
Oh wow!
So that was my path.
So that job really set you on a path, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. And I did include all the links where you can be found down below. But if where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, it's great. I invite everyone to come visit the website. That's www.punkwrite.com. I have the YouTube channel Punkwrite with Smee under the same. You can find me the same way, Punkwrite. And I invite you to check out Scarboys. I think it's $12 on Amazon, and I really think it's a good book. I wrote a good book. I'm really happy, and I it's not perfect. I could probably go back and change some things, but I really think that it takes you from beginning to end, and you'll enjoy the book. So I invite you to purchase Scarboys.
Yeah, that link is in the description. It take you right to Amazon, right to the page where you can pick that up and give Scarboys a read. Check it out.
All right.
Yeah. So Adam, thanks for coming by, and I know it's kind of weird at the time zones and stuff, but thanks for taking the time out of your Friday night to come and have a little chat with me.
Dude, I totally appreciate the time. I really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. It's always fun to hear everyone's story, so it's a lot of fun.
Okay.
So thanks everyone for dropping by. We'll see you again soon.